Hope everyone's well. My dear friends, we're starting something awesome tonight. We're starting one of the classics of all classics. It's called the chapter 4, the Sha'ar Bitachon, the gate of, we have to translate what bitachon is. We're going to do that in a moment. It's an absolute classic. It's life-changing. It's going to bring you incredible connection to God, peace of mind, serenity, blessings in your life, success. One of the most important fundamental principles in all of life, in all of Judaism, in all of Kabbalah. And this book in particular was learned by some of the greatest mystics. For example, an angel himself called the Maggid, who learned with Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the great rabbi who wrote the Code of Jewish Law. He learned with an angel and he instructed him every day, you've got to learn this. And that reduces the intensity of the Yetzer Hara, the angel. So can you imagine, this is like, you read a book, the front page says who recommends it, recommendation. Can you imagine getting an angel to recommend the book? That's pretty cool. That means Hashem's happy. And the great Chidah said we should learn it. Let me just actually record this a second. Let's record. Who else famously learned it? The Chasam Sofer, Tzemach Tzedek, so many of the great tzaddikim learned it. And it was written about 1,000 years ago by the great Kabbalist Rabbi Avi Hill. And let's get stuck in. So first of all, let's understand, what does the term bitachon mean? Anyone like to put in the chat or on Facebook, what does bitachon mean? What does it mean, bitachon? What does bitachon mean? So we translate it, I like Sivan said, confidence. So you're saying trust, but here's the problem with trust. Trust, I'm afraid to say, is not a good enough expression. It doesn't do it. It doesn't hit the spot. It's not, that's the problem with Hebrew. Bitachon is what we're looking for. Trust is partial bitachon, but it's not full bitachon. Again, there's two expressions in Hebrew that we're meant to have a relationship with Hashem. Expression number one is emunah. We're meant to have faith in God. For any of you who haven't read, I don't know, nice to see you, Kitty. If you haven't read this book, make sure you read this book called Garden of Emunah. You got it, Kitty? Have you got it? Garden of Emunah. It's a life-changing book. It starts helping you understand that conceptually, Hashem runs the world. But says the great Chazon Ish in his book called Emunah Bitachon, the difference between emunah and bitachon, the difference between faith and trust, for lack of a better expression right now, is that bitachon is the practical implementation of emunah. Meaning, you might theoretically say, yeah, I know Hashem runs the world. But bottom line, how does that impact your life? Are you still stressing about the things you need in your life? If you are, that's a lack of bitachon. My dear friends, the best word, I want us on our journey of this chapter, which will take probably several months. On this journey, I want us to start really thinking if we can find a better English translation of bitachon. For now, I would say the best thing I've come up with just on the outset is actually to entrust. When you entrust someone with something valuable to you. So for example, let's say a child. The child someone is legally responsible for that child. In most scenarios, it'll be the parent. In some scenarios, it'll be the state. In some scenarios, a foster parent. In some scenarios, an adopted parent. Someone is normally entrusted. Who are we entrusting the worries in our life to? For example, health. Health doesn't mean, I think Hashem runs the world, but I'm really worried about my health and my doctor, and it's between me, my doctor, and my medicine. That's not bitachon. There's zero bitachon. If it's like, yeah, Hashem's got a little bit to do with it, that's not even semi-bitachon. My dear friends, I'd love you to have real joy and serenity in your life and tranquility. The way to do that is the following. The thing that you're stressed about most of all, I'd like you to give it over to Hashem. It's another expression of what bitachon means. Bitachon doesn't mean trust. It means handing it over, letting go. There's this phrase that King David says, Tehillim, Psalms, is full of expressions of what bitachon is. And one of the most beautiful expressions is found in Psalms, where it says the line, you can check it out later. I've told some of you this line many times, Hashleich el Hashem. Throw it over to Hashem, and then Yahavcha, and then he will sustain you. Meaning, if you want Hashem to sustain you, you've got to give the keys to him. You know, on Shabbat, when I left to go out the house, I didn't take my key with me. And then, I forgot something, so I had to knock back. My poor wife had to get up from her armchair and had to go to the front and open the door for me. And then I won't do it again. And then, unbelievably, I got to shul and I forgot something again. So I had to walk all the way back and then knock on the door. Because my wife was entrusted with the key. Who has got the key to your life? Who has got the key to your health? Is it you or Hashem? So Michal's asking, how do you give something to Hashem? Good question. The answer is twofold. Number one, through prayer. Number two, through faith. I literally say this. I say this, Adasa. I say this to Hashem. I say, Hashem, I'm entrusting you with X. So let me share with you. Let's just try and feel out what bitachon is. And I'm going to share with you a little bit into some of the stresses of my life. You ready, everybody? So here we go. Let's get personal. Before my daughter got engaged, for the past 2 years, we've been trying to marry off my beautiful daughter, which you might think, if she's so beautiful, why is it so hard to marry off? So as you know, it's not as easy as that, because ultimately we're not looking for any old Charlie to marry her. We're looking for the soulmate to marry her. We're looking for someone who is kind and lovely and her other half and sharing the same spiritual areas. And they're both attracted to each other and they're people that can together go and achieve their potential. It's not simple. So then you say, okay, really Hashem runs it, because it says in the Talmud, Hashem, Hashem, so if any of you are in the genre, in the area, in the arena of you're getting stressed about who you're going to marry or who a loved one of yours is going to marry, step one is to understand Hashem runs it. So I knew that. I know that Hashem runs it. The Talmud says, just like he splits the Red Sea, Hashem decides who marries who. Hashem mezaveg sivugim, because at the end of the day, it's a miracle how you can find your other half amongst billions of people out there in the world. It's a miracle. But here's the problem. Even if you conceptually, theoretically, intellectually say, I know Hashem is the one who puts you together. He's the matchmaker. If you ever get stressed about it, that means you haven't handed it over. That means you think I'm still responsible somewhat. It's still down to me. Because I tell you, the things that you are responsible for, I'm not having sleepless nights about. We have sleepless nights about the areas of our control. So the paradox and dichotomy and struggle was that me and my wife started getting a little bit nervous and upset. Is my daughter going to get married? Will she ever get married? We realized lack of bitachon. I haven't handed it over. And I would open up my Psalms and say, Hashem, I'm sorry, I had that, my Yitzhara got into me. I shouldn't have even felt that. It's all down to you. It's on you. You are entrusted. It's up to you. Nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. So in the area of the stress, says Reb Dessler, if there's an element of stress or worry, that's a lack of bitachon. You haven't genuinely handed it over. And then you literally in your prayers need to say, Hashem, my daughter's marriage status is down to you. You are the matchmaker. You let me know when she's going to get engaged. I'll just pay for the wedding. In other words, that is what you're meant to think. We'll explain. There's a question coming up in a minute. We'll get to that question shortly. Scenario number two. So thank God that's not where I'm worried about now, because Baruch Hashem, amazingly, miraculously, Hashem brought us salvation and found this amazing guy who was my dad before he passed away. It was the very last words he said to me was Sam Kaufman. He taught my daughter's fiance. He taught him, and he prophetically, on the last his last words in my house was, he's the one. But it took a bit of time for the one to realize that. So we got there in the end, thank God. But now my stress, what's my stress today? Shouldn't be my stress, but where my Yetzer Hara wants me to stress, should I say. Where my Yetzer Hara wants me to stress is the following. So please God, in a couple of months, my wife and I are going off to Israel to open up a new organization in Tel Aviv. Exciting? Exciting. Problem is, it costs a lot of money and we have to fundraise. Problem is, it's a cost of living crisis. Problem is, some of my students who pledged to help now are facing financial crisis. Problem is, everything has gone up by about 20%. So my Yetzer Hara wants to stress the heck out of me and my wife and say, whoa, what are we doing? Maybe we shouldn't go. Maybe we should rethink it. Maybe we just need to have sleepless nights worrying about how we're going to afford it. But my Yetzer Tov, my good inclination says, Rabbi Hill, behave. Hashem runs it. Whenever we say grace after meals, we say the words, Baruch atah Hashem, Hazan, et, Hakol. Hashem sustains everyone, everything. God's in control. There could be a cost of living crisis. There could be this crypto crash, and one of my donors was going to give us in crypto. There could be this Ukraine-Russia war. There was COVID. There's Boris Johnson being Boris Johnson. There's all these issues. There's Joe Biden being extremely old. There's all these issues, but if Hashem wants it to work, it will work. End of. But then my Yetzer Hara gets into my, yeah, but how are you going to afford it? That's where the Yetzer Hara is getting in. If I stress about how I'm going to pay the bills, how we're going to put on the amazing events, I'd like to really inspire thousands and thousands of people to Tel Aviv, build an amazing center and bring thousands of singles together to help them get married and bring them super close to Hashem and do all loads of great work. But it's going to cost money to hire venues and da-da-da and everything. But if I stress about it, that's a lack of bitachon. By the way, if any of you would like to partner me and join me in helping to build up an amazing, inspiring community in Tel Aviv, and you'd like the mitzvah of giving charity in that area, I'm very happy to help you and assist you in giving that mitzvah. So maybe one of you could be our salvations. But the point is, my friends, the point is that if I was to stress about it, that would be a lack of bitachon. So you feeling me now? You feeling me, everybody? The areas in your life that everyone's got a missing piece of the jigsaw, because that's why we're here in this world, to grow. So Hashem doesn't give it to you all straight away. He makes you sweat for it. He makes you pray for it. But my dear friends, if you're worried about that missing piece of the jigsaw, that means you don't have, sorry to say, full bitachon. A baby sleeps peacefully at night because the baby knows its mummy is going to look after her or him 24/7. We need to feel that Hashem's going to look after us 24/7. That's what bitachon means. Again, we haven't yet got a good English translation. We just started. If anybody now, in light of what I've just said, has got a good English translation now of what bitachon is, other than I've said the word in trust. You know, the word betach also means from the word security. It means you've given over security. It's funny. It's like you have a bodyguard. If any of you have had a bodyguard, any of you? So if you have a bodyguard, that bodyguard's role is to take over responsibility for your life and ensure that people don't go and kill you and harm you. And the idea of a good bodyguard, that bodyguard is taking control of your security. And you shouldn't be worrying about it. If you're worrying about it, that means either you haven't got faith in trust in your bodyguard. So in a sense, Hashem is our bodyguard, but not just our bodyguard, Hashem. God is going to give you, he gives you your finances, he gives you your health. Now, I'll give you even more of a poignant, problematic example. Health. So this is going to be interesting. So in a scenario of health, let's say someone, God forbid, has been diagnosed with cancer, which I'm spelling it out because the Kabbalists say we actually shouldn't say the name because it brings it power when we say the name. So we call it Yena Machla, the illness which shan't be named. So for example, when my dad fell ill with it, we knew that it was up to Hashem. But then on one hand, we did get stressed. So that means it was a lack of bitachon. Now, here's where it gets complicated. My dad passed away 2 years ago. So what does that mean? Hashem didn't do his job? No, it means that Hashem decided in his infinite wisdom that my father's life, he fulfilled his case, he fulfilled his end. It was time for him to be in the next world. So if it's time for him to be in the next world, then it's not that he didn't do his job, it's that he's done his job. It's just not the job that we wanted him to do. But it's not that Hashem did a really bad job at the chemo. God forbid. It's that Hashem had a different plan to us. The very moment my father's last breath was done on the Yud Zion Sivan, Yud Zion Iyar 2 years ago, that was when he was always going to be. That's when he fulfilled his mission in this world. End of. And now my level of bitachon now is to say, okay, Hashem, I trust you so much that I trust that was the best thing for my father after all. Now, here's where it gets complicated. On one hand, we seem to be saying, give everything over to Hashem. And that would seemingly say we should be relying on miracles. We shouldn't be doing anything in our lives. We should essentially, why are any of you going to work? Maybe some of you aren't going to work. For those of you who go to work, what's the point of going to work? Just give it over to Hashem, Sivan. Give everything to Hashem. And then let Hashem worry about how much money is coming to you. She said, Baruch Atah Hashem hazan et hakol, Hashem sustains. So why do we have to go to work? Why do we have to go to a doctor? Why do I have to fundraise? All those three things. The answer is because we sinned in the Garden of Eden. And when we sinned in the Garden of Eden, we created a big balagan. We now made the long way round. We now have to hide Hashem and have to engage in the physical and have to deal with the consequences of the sin of the Garden of Eden, which is number one, by the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread. We've now got to engage, but here's the magical point, everybody. We have to engage in the physical. For those who are singles, you've got to go on dates. You've got to join a matchmaker. You've got to go to events. You might even have to join an app and do some swiping. For those who are trying to earn money, yes, unfortunately, we have to go to work. For those who, God forbid, there's an illness, one has to go to the doctor. I've got a very dear friend. I wish him for Shalem after this. We want to learn also in his merit for Rabbi Yonah ben Chaya Bracha, but also someone asked me to say tonight that this should be in their merit. So let's just find the name. 1 second. So we just do this properly. Tonight's Holy Share is sponsored in the merit of Avraham ben Esho. Should have a refuah shalem. Should get better for Corona super quickly. So, but he should go to doctors like we go to doctors. My friend with cancer needs to go to a doctor. Why? Because you can't rely on a miracle. Why? Because we've got to play the game. We've got to, it's just a game. Here's the crux, everybody. We need to have almost a schizophrenic attitude to life, meaning on one hand, we've got to engage. We've got to go to work. We've got to put our effort in. But we should not have bitachon in our efforts. We need to have bitachon in Hashem. The consequence of the effort is down to Hashem. So, for example, with my daughter, when we were looking for her to get married, yes, we had to sign up to some really rubbish dating websites, and we had to connect to some matchmakers. So we had to tick the box, but we never had faith in them. We wondered, is this the way Hashem wants to funnel down the blessing? In the end, in hindsight, it was always my father. But then we were right, not just to rest on our laurels and wait for him to be ready, just in case he wanted to say no. So we had to go running through hoops and have 2 years of nonsense and rubbish going to the wrong people, and my poor daughter going on really rubbish dates. Sorry, by the way, if any of you were my daughter's ex, it wasn't rubbish. I'm sure they were all wonderful. Well, they were just not the right ones. Meaning we have to still engage, but not have faith in your efforts. Only have faith in Hashem. So the same idea, my friend who's going for chemotherapy tomorrow, yes, he's going to have chemo, but he's not putting his faith in his chemo. He's not putting his faith in the consultants. He's putting his faith in Hashem. And if Hashem wants to work through that, so be it. And by the way, maybe Hashem will want to work through a different medium. But we can't just sit back on our laurels because we're not allowed to jump up a building and say Hashem's going to catch me, because that is being irresponsible and reckless. So this is where people get confused. On one hand, you think you have to go and put the work in, but never have faith in that work. You're meant to have faith in Hashem, not faith in the work. Okay, let's continue now. Everyone with me? Anyone got a question before we now get into the words? So in short, what we're saying is bitachon is giving it fully over to Hashem. He's responsible. yes, I'm delegated to do a bit of ticking boxes and ensuring that I'm not relying on a miracle. But it's not that my actions are going to cause the success. It's that my actions may be the vessel that Hashem's gonna funnel his blessing through. Any questions? Any on chat? If you like on Zoom, you can put a chat on the questions, or even on Facebook if you have a question before we go on, before we start the text. Okay, let's start the text, everybody. Hopefully, your litmus test, and this is your homework this week, everybody. You're not allowed to stress about the areas of, you can't stress about the missing piece of the jigsaw in your life. Really try and just give it over to Hashem. Say some Tehillim, say some, just putting it live on Instagram, say some Psalms, and at the end of that Psalm saying, Hashem, I give this over to you. This stress in my life, I now hand it over. You're handing it over. That's what bitachon is. But it's got to be real. It's got, and then you should feel a relief afterwards. Say, phew, my project's ended. It's now over to Hashem. And that's how we should feel every day. And if you're feeling that stress, that means you haven't achieved true bitachon yet. That's the Rabbi Hill little intro. Now, for the most important part, let's hear what the great Rabbeinu Bachai says. Okay. By the way, the Ramban Nachmanides, the way he puts it, is he says that bitachon is an outgrowth of emunah. He says emunah is like a tree, and bitachon is like the fruit that that tree produces. Emunah can exist without bitachon, but bitachon can't exist without emunah. For it's emunah that gives birth to bitachon. If you don't believe in God, there's nothing to talk about. If you don't believe that Hashem sustains the world, there's nothing to talk about. Step one is to say the animamin, the principles of Maimonides, that Hashem, who boirei umanhig, he creates and sustains the whole abroim, every single aspect in creation, every little thing, even a blade of grass, comes from Hashem. That's emunah. That's not even bitachon yet. That's emunah. But that's the tree. The consequence of that. Now I understand that me in my own little fruity life, Hashem is in charge of that too. That's the way it works. Here we go. Says, very excited, big excitement, big little drum roll. This is big. This is, you're going to be learning this for months, so this is where it all begins, everybody. This is where it all begins and ends, in a sense. It's all about bitachon. Says the Chayva Sabova is the following. Bitachon is vital to every Eved Hashem, with regards to spiritual matters and worldly matters. And the benefits of bitachon, let's start off with spiritual matters first. So here we go. According to the Chovas Ovis, the first spiritual benefit of bitachon. Number one, menuchas nafshoy, peace of mind. There was someone I always used to speak to in Israel. Good afternoon, Roland, on Instagram. Good afternoon. Someone I used to speak to in Israel, and he used to say, now's not a good time. I need some menuchas hanefesh. I need some peace of mind when I have the conversation with you. It's very ironic. A lot of people, when they see me calling, they're like, oh my gosh, I need a bit of tranquility to deal with Rabbi Hill today. It's a bit of a shame, right? But the point is, sometimes if it's very important discussion, it's a delicate conversation, you can't just do it on the fly. You can't do it if you're like juggling 20 balls, unless you're Superman or Superwoman. It's normally good to be able to be in a place where you're relaxed, you're serene. That's why I'm sure you know certain delicate conversations you need to have with people. You need to pick your moments. Some people are really rubbish at picking their moments, right? You got to learn how to pick your moments, because what people search for is menuchas hanefesh. Says the Chovas Habovas, number one benefit of bitachon is you're going to be much more tranquil. Because guess what? The things that are stressing you out, once you have bitachon, will no longer stress you out. And if they are stressing you out, it means you haven't got bitachon. Very simple. You haven't handed it over. Once you hand it over, then you're going to have peace of mind, because you'll be reliant on Hashem. In the way, and this is the analogy now, analogy number one of the many analogies we're going to have, is the analogy of a servant relying on a master. Now, how do we understand the servant on a master? So, the commentators say the following. By the way, I think someone actually put a chat. I think it was Adassa. Let's just see if someone had a question for me before I go into this. So basically, Bitochen is making a decision and doing something, surrendering the outcome. Correct, Siba. Yeah, actually, I'm not sure, because making a decision, you actually, Hashem should be being part of that decision making. You shouldn't even be making a decision, right? You should be falling into the decision that Hashem has made. If the Torah, for example, do I do X or Y? Often it's clear from the Torah or from the writings or from knowing the will of Hashem, what the will of Hashem is. I really feel it's the will of Hashem for us to go to Tel Aviv. It's almost like it's like a chess piece. We're like a chess piece that's like being taken around the board. So I don't even believe you make a decision, actually. So but it is surrendering. And it is surrendering the outcome and consequence of your action. I like that. I just disagree with your points about making a decision. Okay, so why is the servant in the master? Here we go. Servant does not have the freedom to provide for himself. A real servant, not talking about, the real old-fashioned servants in the time of the Talmud, where someone actually sold themselves into slavery. They have no freedom. They can't expect provisions from a third party. The servant is entirely dependent upon his master. It's like how I'm totally dependent on my wife. She's my master. I'm her servant, as she would say to me many times. And that's a joke, by the way, and has no choice but to rely on him, absolutely. The servant has to rely on the master, absolutely. When a person feels entirely dependent upon Hashem, in the way that a servant depends upon the master, that's what's called an Eved Hashem. So now we've got a really nice new label for you, everybody. You ready? A new label? Today you ask, have I been an Eved Hashem today? Have I been a servant of Hashem today? Which, by the way, my rabbi in Yeshiva used to say that let's not even call it a servant, let's call it for what it is, a slave of God. A slave has even less free will than a servant. Now you might think, I didn't want to be a slave. I wasn't like looking to be slaves. If only you merited to be a slave of God, because Hashem is so beautiful and wonderful and loves you so much unconditionally, that if you were his slave, your ego would be so eroded, you'd be so humbled that you'd be on cloud 49. If only we could be a slave of Hashem. That means every emotion, every experience, every action, we're literally only what does Hashem want now? And all of a sudden you're joyous because the highest soul is now laughing and dancing and rejoicing. Our problem is our ego is ruling us. Most of us are slaves to our ego. My dear friends, either way you're a slave. You have to realize that no one's free. There's no such thing as freedom. It's kind of the Pesach Kabbalistic talk, if you remember it. You're never free. You're either a slave to Hashem or a slave to your ego, or a slave to society, or a slave to wokeism, or a slave to republicanism, or a slave to another ism, or another ism, another ism. The only ism we should be a slave to is Torah-ism or Hashem-ism. That's the only ism we should be a slave to. And therefore, once we're a slave, you've got to ask yourself, today was I a slave to Hashem? If you were, it's a beautiful song I sang yesterday, the last moments of Shabbat with my community. We sang, Ana Hashem, please Hashem, ki ani avdecha. Can I be your servant? We just sang, can I be your servant, Hashem? It's from Psalms, number 115. It's in Hallel. Just, can I be your servant? Can I be your servant? Can I be your servant? That's, by the way, if you get the yes, you have everything. Because once you're Hashem's servant, he'll feed you, he'll nurture you, he'll look after you. Now, I've got to explain something over here, because I bet there's so many questions that come out. One question, if it's okay, all the chats I'm going to do at the end, I'm going to look at all the questions. So if you have questions, please put them in chats, and at the end we'll get to them, because I can't go there now. I'm on a roll, as they say. I'm channeling. Here's the question, everybody. Listen. How does it work in practice in life? Because we see that most people are not slaves of Hashem, and most people do not have B'tachon. And some people get better from illnesses, and some people, like my dad did, who definitely had B'tachon, died with an illness. So how does it work? Here we go. Are you ready now for the next complicated part of the introduction tonight? Hashem works on a sliding scale. Hashem works from a perspective of what we call hashkafa pratis, divine providence. where the more you have bitachon, the more he takes over. If you have half bitachon, he'll half take over. If you have a third bitachon, he'll third take over. If you have 5% bitachon, guess what? He'll 5% take over. If you have 0 bitachon, he'll 0 take over and say, it's down to you. Good luck. Now, let's understand. It's a bit like, let's say, Hashem, please, this is the wrong analogy, forgive me, but I think this might help, this might work. Let's say you're at work and you've got a project and you've got different people that are helping you or assisting you, or you're employing different consultants to come in. The consultants you employ will be the ones who are going to get involved. So it's up to us. Are we employing Hashem to be the project manager or not? Hashem only gets involved if you employ him. So for example, if you say, in the areas of having a child, that's an interesting one. You say, okay, even though I'm struggling to have a child, I know it comes from you, Hashem. If we're meant to get pregnant, it's down to you. That's an area I can go over to you 100%. But maybe in the area of finance, people say, nah, you really want me to work. It's really, I've got to work smart. It's about my marketing. It's about my social media. It's about X, Y, Z. So I don't really think, Hashem, you're like into this area. So I'll like take control of this area if you're right, Hashem. You just focus on getting us pregnant. We do that. We divide up and divvy up our life. We say in the areas of finance, that's one area. In the area of health, it's a different area. Spirituality, our children's welfare, our children's happiness. What we meant to do, if only, is every single aspect of our life, like a slave, hands it all over. A slave's children belongs to the master. Do you know that? A slave's blanket belongs to the master. As I said, like in my house, everything belongs to my wife. Everything, right? So the point is, when you really give it over to Hashem, but if you're only partially giving over, then Hashem only partially takes control. And that's where it gets super complex. And that's why we can make tremendous mistakes. Because if you're holding on, let's say we've got many keys. You've got the key of health, key of relationships, the key of spirituality, the key of your house, right? The key of your children. And you, let's say only 1 or 2 of them you give to Hashem, and the others you're holding on to yourself. So we can make a really, Hashem will let us get on with it, like in work. If you don't get the consultant to help you, it's down to you. And then if it's down to you, maybe you'll succeed, maybe you won't succeed, but don't blame God. God's going to back out. Hashem's going to say, this is nature. You see, the majority of the world, my friends, Hashem backs out of much of their life because they force him out their life. Hashem would love to be involved in every single human being's life, but Hashem doesn't force himself on us. We have free will. And the most important free will decision of all is how much we want Hashem in our lives. And based on that free will decision, that's how much Hashem will be in our lives. That's what it means. In a sense, Hakol b'dei shamayim, chutz miyiras shamayim. Everything's in the hands of Hashem apart from the fear of Hashem. The irony is, of all the hishtadlus we have to do, the most important hishtadlus decision is how much you have bitachon, how much you have emunah, how much you're handing aspects of your life over to Hashem. But let's understand, it's like a steering wheel. Your hands on the steering wheel. Really what you're meant to do, and by the way, obviously don't do this. You're not meant to like say, Hashem, you drive my car. That would be very scary. Let's not do that because that's relying on a miracle. But saying that, we still do that. When I go on a long journey, I start off by saying, Tefillah Saderech, path of the way. Hashem, you protect us. Then I do my best to concentrate, and I do my best not to speak on the phone, and I do my best to obey the law and to be conscious. But I remember once I was with a big tzaddik called Shlomo Brevda. I had the merit of driving around this great tzaddik. You should know, if you ever have a great rabbi or a tzaddik in your life, the more you can actually be a servant to them, the better. So I was merited. This big tzaddik came to England for a while. I got the opportunity to almost like serve on him, which was the most amazing experience of my life. I used to take him to my cross. I used to take him. So we had this long journey once to Somerset because the reason I connected, he had a similar illness to the one I had. That's how we started connecting. So I took him to Somerset to see this healer. And at a certain point in the journey, he said to me, do you realize we had a bit of a miracle there? Now, number one, that is because my driving isn't the best. I have many attributes, but driving isn't one of them. But on a serious level, he claimed that Hashem saved our life that moment. There was a big truck which was trying to overtake us. and was playing silly games, and he felt that there was a big divine providence moment where Hashem literally saved our lives. So we don't even know how many times Hashem saves our lives. Oblivion. He's a tzaddik, so he's aware of actually what's going on in the world, where the angels are getting involved, where godliness is getting involved. So even when we're driving, Hashem is in charge of the car. But that's if you have the emunah for that. It's very much pertaining. It's very subjective to your own spiritual level. So that's the first level. That's what he says. The first benefit is you have a peace of mind. Essentially, if any of you can't sleep tonight because you're worried about something, you haven't got bitachon. Unless you're worried that you don't have bitachon. And then maybe that's okay to worry about that. Because probably the only thing you're allowed to worry about is your spiritual area, ironically. But if you're worrying about your kids, or your house, or your business, or the cost of living crisis, or getting someone married, or God forbid someone's health, I'm very afraid to say that's indicative of you haven't given it over to Hashem. Because if you gave it over to Hashem, you wouldn't be worried. How beautiful is that, by the way? Mwah! Isn't that? You start seeing how much more happy your life is going to become. We're going to have got this amazing talk with Rabbi Tatz on Wednesday, what the Kabbalistic definition of happiness is. I would say this is going to be part of it, just as a byproduct. Because if we take the worries away of your life and give it over to Hashem, the consequence will be there'll be so much more happiness. Then he says the following. He says, because the true servant of Hashem must rely on Hashem in every aspect. If one does not place his entire trust in Hashem, he will inevitably place trust in someone other than Hashem. And then he's not a servant. Again, if a servant's got a master, he's only got one master. Our problem is, my friends, we've got like 23 masters. We've got like Hashem sometimes. We've got Boris Johnson sometimes. We've got interest rates. What's going to happen to interest rates? Oh my gosh. Is it going to get to 10%, 20%? I would say to you, relax. Hashem's in control. What you need to eat, how you need to dress, Hashem will provide. Hashem is providing. We need to have that level of emunah. Let's not make interest rates our master. God forbid there's an illness. We can't say, that doctor's my master. That consultant's my master. That medicine is my master. And we do that. We have many, many, many masters, and that's super wrong. And that's indicative where we're not a servant of Hashem. Chayvus Salom is saying, just one master in all areas of every single aspect of your life. And then he says the following, moreover, if someone places trust in any entity other than Hashem, listen to what happens. Hashem withdraws his providence from upon him and leaves him into the hands of the one whom he placed his trust. Hashem is super ironic and a bit sarcastic and a bit real. And if you're saying to your wife, oh my gosh, we're so lucky. We've managed to get the best consultant in this area. We can rely on that consultant. Hashem's going to be, okay, shame, I wanted to help, but all right, let's hope that consultant isn't going to be drunk, or let's hope that consultant isn't going to be making stupid decisions. Hashem wants to channel through messengers. Once, God forbids, we make the messenger the master, then he can't be the messenger that Hashem channels through, because Hashem is giving you the consequence of your free will. And if your free will, now again, what you're meant to do is the following. You're meant to still look for the best consultant, but then you're meant to say that Hashem, please, can you work via this best consultant? I'll give you an analogy. The Rambam, who was a doctor, has composed a prayer. Listen to this prayer. He composed a prayer for every doctor to say that before they started treating a patient, the doctor should say, it's all down to Hashem. May I be a messenger and a medium for God. And then he's got to open his eyes and do the very best job he can do. That's the way a spiritual doctor should work. And essentially, if you put your trust in Hashem, that's the way the doctor will work, even unbeknown to him. Hashem will be working through him. I'll give you a story. So one of the great tzaddikim of our time, it's called the Chazon Ish. And he had the ability, through learning Torah, to know about every aspect of science and wisdom, just through Torah, through his intuition, through his spiritual, Kabbalistic knowledge. So he used to give tremendous blachas. There was this man who came to see him, and said to him, can you give me a blessing? I'm going in for a operation, very dangerous operation. They found a tumor in my brain. Can you give me a blessing? Chazon Ish closed his eyes, took his Hebrew name. He started scanning. He asked for some paper. He asked for a pen. He started drawing a human brain, even though he wasn't a doctor. He starts doing a whole plan of how surgery should go. And after a few minutes, he finished off the drawing and said, please hand this to the consultant. This will help you and you'll have a refuah shalema. So the man went to the consultant and said, by the way, the great Chazon Ish gave me this. The consultant looked at it. He was a leading consultant in Israel. Looked at it and said, this is a very risky, very radical surgery. Like, I wouldn't recommend this. And the man said, just please have it with you during the operation. During the operation, the man started bleeding in his brain. And all of a sudden, the consultant realized, oh my gosh, the way to treat him is exactly through the Chazon Ish's diagram. And he took out the diagram in the middle of the treatment room and started following it step by step and saved the man's life. My friends, when you have bitachon in Hashem, that's the way it works. That's the way it works. And by the way, it worked out well, and he was blessed and he got better, only because for Hashem, he said he's meant to keep on living. If he would have died and you've got bitachon in Hashem, it doesn't mean that Hashem did a bad job. It just means Hashem said, actually, he's fulfilled his potential now. He's meant to be with me, with the angels in the garden. And he's meant to be in Gan Eden now. So you have to understand, when people die, it doesn't mean God never does a bad job. Hashem is never negligent in surgery. He's the master of the universe. He created our brains. He can fix it if he wants to. But it's just that if we only give it over to Hashem, then Hashem works via the consultants. He works via the different pipelines in reality. But God forbid if we put our faith in the pipelines, my friends, that's avodah zarah, that's idolatry. That's literally idolatry. That's believing that the pipelines are in charge. And Hashem is like, wow, I'm brokenhearted. Shame. I really wanted to help. Let's hope they do a good job. Because Hashem does back out. Unless maybe somewhere in your heart you do teshuvah, putting your faith in the consultant at the last minute. You say, actually, I need you, Hashem. Hashem will say, okay, Baruch Hashem, now it can work. Isn't that funny if Hashem says Baruch Hashem? That'd be really funny, right? Maybe he does. By the way, the first time Baruch Hashem, blessed is Hashem, was mentioned, anyone knows, you can put a comment in. It's with Jethro, Yisro, Moses' father-in-law, was the very first one to say Baruch Hashem. It would be quite fun and maybe ironic if Hashem himself says Baruch Hashem. Why not? Anyway, back to this. Says the Chovos HaLevavos. And again, please, this is deep stuff, so please keep writing and we'll go through your questions at the end when I pause for a breath. Because I'm not pausing for a breath yet. This is too important. Here we go. Says the Chovos HaLevavos. You start seeing why now this is the most important thing probably we've ever learned together, ever. For those that are going through conversion, as I said to you in the past, one of my wife's biggest blessings is to help people convert. These inspirational people following in the path of Ruth, Moses' father-in-law. Same thing. The people who are going through conversion should not put their trust in the Bet Din. They shouldn't put their trust in their tutor, unless it's me. They shouldn't, this is a joke, definitely not. They shouldn't put their trust in themselves. They should put their trust in Hashem and say, when Hashem wants me to get through, I'll get through and I'm going to do my best, but my trust is in Hashem. And then if you put your trust in Hashem, Hashem then strengthens the Bet Din to make better decisions. He then strengthens the tutors to make better decisions, because then I'm acting, when I'm a tutor, I'm literally an agent of God. It's up to the candidate to decide who they're putting trust in. If they're putting trust in me, that's super scary, because now it's down to me. And Hashem won't necessarily work through me because you haven't given him permission to work through me. Hashem waits to be asked. Hashem, you see what's going on here? It's so deep. It's so profound. My gosh. Oy. So we continue. And let's say the words again. Some of his words are just penetrating my heart. If you put your trust in any other entity other than Hashem, let's say it comes to getting a passport. That's a whole miracle now. How do I get my passport renewed? It takes like 10 years. That's exaggeration, by the way, right? But it probably takes about 6 months. And you've got a trip to go. What you're meant to do, if you're an Evet Hashem, say, Hashem, you're actually in charge of passports. So I'm going to send it in. And if you want me to have the passport in time, and by the way, this is where it's cool. You know, I had a student of mine who was on their way to Israel to do mitzvahs there, and then realized his passport wasn't ready. His passport was expired. So he had to send it. Normally it takes many, many months. He had about 10 days. I said, just say to Hashem, you're in charge. If you want me to go, I'll go, but give it over exclusively to Hashem. And because he's on his way to do a mitzvah, and he gave it over to Hashem, he got it like with an hour to go. But he got it. And he went. And he did his mitzvah. And that's the way it works. And if, God forbid, he would have put his trust in passport bureaucracy, he'd still be without his passport now. It'd be the same thing if you're going around, you know, the world now with problems with flights and the problems with luggage. Don't put your trust in EasyJet or Ryanair or this or that. Just put your trust in Hashem. But critically, you've got to be on your way to a mitzvah. If you're not going to do a mitzvah, then kind of Hashem is like, kind of, what's it got to do with me? Like, God forbid you're off to do a terrible sin. Hashem is like, keep me out of it. Anyway, then it says the following. He brings a verse from Jeremiah, where the verse from Jeremiah is, my people have committed 2 evils. They've forsaken me. The source of living waters to dig themselves cisterns, broken cisterns. And then in Tehillim, King David has another analogy of someone, this is the sin of putting your trust in others. They exchanged their glory for the likeness of a grass-eating ox. He compares this golden calf, one of the worst sins of our time, which we did on the 17th of Tammuz, 3,300 years ago. The ultimate worship of idolatry. My friends, they compare that to when you put your trust in others, in systems, in governments, in people, in doctors. God forbid we can't put our trust in anything other than Hashem. Otherwise, that's idolatry. But the good news is, if you do it, watch what happens. It says King David, first of all, Jeremiah, chapter 17, verse 7. Baruch Hagever, the famous song, you know, Baruch Hagever, the famous song, pretty cool song. Baruch Hagever means, blessed is the man or woman who puts his trust in Hashem. Then Hashem will be his security. Because my friends, it's not a system where Hashem will get involved irrespective. I wish it were. It's not as simple as that. Step 1 is down to you. You have free will. Where are you putting your trust? You put your trust in the systems of government, the systems of your work, the systems of the people around you. Hashem backs out. You put your trust in Hashem, then what happens? V'hoya Hashem miftacho. Then Hashem says, oh, now I can be your security. Again, a bit like if you're employing a consultant is going to come and knock on your door saying, hey, I'm here for you, until you employ the consultant. So Hashem needs to be employed. The way you employ him is not by saying, I want to pay you. It's by in your prayer saying, Hashem, I give it over to you. It's what I say every day in my prayers. Every day in my prayers. I say, Hashem, this area, I give over to you. This area, I give over to you. This area, I give over to you. And then I conclude it, every area, I give over to you. Now I can get on with my day. And what's so cool? Hashem is with me 24/7, helping me, working through the people around me. Because I've opened up the gates to enable Hashem to do that. Baruch Hagever, blesses the person who does that, then Hashem will be your security. Or another one from Tehillim, chapter 40. Ashrei Hagever, Shasam Hashem Iftachai v'lo pona el ra'ovim. Praiseworthy is the man who's made Hashem his trust and hasn't turned to the arrogant and those who stray after falsehood. Do you know how tragic it is? If you put your trust in a doctor, the Talmud says, I'm sorry if any of you are doctors, But there's a big problem of a doctor who thinks he's running the world. We call them, says that the best doctors go to hell. Sorry, should I say that? Meaning, because if a doctor thinks that they have a God complex, look, I've got life in my hands. Can you imagine a heart surgeon? The Yetzer Hara of a heart surgeon, the evil inclination of a heart surgeon? I've got life in my hands. I could kill, I could live. They can get super arrogant. God forbid you put your faith in that arrogance. Oy, oy, oy. So therefore, we're meant to do the opposite. You put your faith in Hashem and not in the arrogance. Okay, I'm going to take some questions. So let's have a look. What questions we got? Dun, dun, dun. Julie, I've got Julia something to do, which really helps. That's not a question. He says thank you. Very good. So Julia's saying one of the things that helps is to say thank you. Absolutely. It's to say thanks. Gratitude is a means to achieving trust. I agree. Sivan is asking, so in the areas where Hashem isn't as involved, he's still allowing it to happen. Oh my gosh. So with the war, I can't imagine Putin is praying to Hashem, but what if he is? Oh, very good. So Sivan's asking an amazing question. Let's say the Ukrainian-Russian war. How much is he involved in that? So I've got news for you. If there's people in Ukraine and Russia who are praying to Hashem genuinely, who are genuinely putting trust in Hashem, who are even better, really connected to Torah and putting the trust in Hashem, then 100% there's incredible divine providence in every aspect of what happens to them. You know, I had a friend of mine who was stuck in Ukraine, and I kept saying, like, get the heck out of there. Like, why are you staying? Can you just like go? And eventually they left him. They had a very troublesome journey, but thank God they managed to get out. They got to Vienna. And so I'm convinced that journey, I was praying hard for them, and I'm hoping they were praying as well. Hashem was involved. So the way it works is, Sivan, sometimes in the micro cases, Hashem has what's called divine providence in every aspect. Like when Joseph went off to Egypt, it says when the brothers sold Joseph, they put him to the Ishmaelites, who then sold him to the Midianites, who sold him eventually to the Egyptians. He was eventually on a caravan that had beautiful smelling perfumes, because even though Hashem said he's got to go to Egypt, he didn't have to go in a horrible smelling caravan. He went in the most beautiful, perfume scented caravan, because even this most intricate aspects of Joseph's journey to Egypt was divinely orchestrated by Hashem. And that's the way everyone, tomorrow night, please join me. Those of you in London, please come to Hartspool Golf Club. So I'm going to talk there. There's dinner at 8 o'clock. And then 8:45, we're doing one of the most hardest talks of all, why do bad things happen? So I'm going to talk a few stories of the Holocaust. In the Holocaust, as they make a great example. The miracles that happened to those that survived, you see that there was incredible divine providence in minutia there, which saved lives. And maybe for others who didn't have that same level of faith, Hashem didn't have to get involved in the minutia. But what is important to understand is, for the whole world, when someone lives or dies, that is Hashem. That is Hashem. Hashem decides who lives, who dies. Even if you don't, it's the in-between that it's up to us how much we want God's involvement. So I'm on Instagram, someone has just said they're going to a doctor tomorrow. You should have a refuah shalema. If you send me your Hebrew name, I'll make a prayer for you. But it's very good. Do not have any faith in the doctor. Have all your faith in Hashem, and then you'll be fine. That's what we're saying. You still go, by the way, don't tell the doctor that. It might be really rude. I've got no faith in you. I think you're the worst doctor in the world. So please don't do that, because then you might be upset. So just say, really happy to be here. But in your head and in your prayers, put your faith in Hashem. That's what we're saying. That is what we're saying. Any questions before I conclude for tonight? So I hope you enjoyed that. I tell you, it's mind-blowing, it's life-changing. It's if anybody's upset, if anybody can't sleep tonight because they're worrying, it shows that's something to work on. Then the next, what you do in the morning or even through the night, you just get up. So I've done sometimes, if I'm like stressed about something, I'll get up, open up my Psalms and say, from now on, Hashem, I can see I'm still holding on to it. I don't want to. I'm giving it over to you. Hashlech Hashem. This word hashlech means literally cast it off. So throw it. You literally throw it and say, it's no longer mine. You take the key and you throw it to the other side of the room. It's not mine anymore. Zelo sheli. You say it's not mine. And by doing that, that's the Hashlech al Hashem. Which, so I'm going to send you Sivan. Which one is Hashlech al Hashem? I forget offhand. I don't want to say the wrong one. I'll look it up quickly, and then I will send it to you. Which one is Hashlech al Hashem? Any other questions before I go? So Yalla, Hashem should give you all tremendous blessings. He should enable you to have bitachon. Are you having bitachon? Then Hashem will then look after you in every single minutiae of your life. We'll continue doing this, Hashem, every Sunday night at this time.